What if I told you that in the deserts and mountains of Arizona, people don't always disappear deep in endless forests? Sometimes they vanish in open terrain, in dry canyons, near trails, camps, and ridgelines where searchers believe they should have been easy to find. Arizona is known for its heat, its deserts, its cactus-covered landscapes, and its rugged mountain ranges, but this chapter reveals a much darker pattern hidden beneath that beauty. Around Tucson, Saguaro National Park, the Catalina Mountains, the Chiricahua Mountains, Mount Baldy, and several remote wilderness regions, people have disappeared under circumstances that are difficult to explain. Some were children, some were experienced adults, some were rangers, hikers, hunters, or campers. And again, the same disturbing details appear. Massive searches, sudden confusion, missing clothing, impossible distances, scent trails that make no sense, bodies found in strange places, and official explanations that feel incomplete. The chapter begins by focusing on southern Arizona, especially the region around Tucson. This area is surrounded by mountain ranges: the Santa Catalina Mountains, the Tucson Mountains, the Santa Rita Mountains, and the Rincon Mountains. It is a landscape of desert heat, steep ridges, rocky canyons, and isolated wilderness. To most visitors, it is beautiful, but according to these cases, it may also be a place where people vanish in clusters. One of the first cases is Jerry Hayes, a 5-year-old boy who disappeared in 1938 in Rucker Canyon, in the Chiricahua Mountains. Jerry was camping with his family at a hunting camp. The camp was located at a high elevation, surrounded by rugged terrain. On the morning of his disappearance, he was last seen near the camp, and within a short time, he was gone. His family searched and quickly called for help. More than 1,000 people eventually became involved in the search, covering the mountain region in an attempt to find him. At first, the searchers found no trace. Then, days later, a group of men followed tracks up a steep boulder-covered slope, climbing roughly 1,000 feet in elevation. There, far above the camp, they found Jerry's body. He was missing his shoes and socks, and his coat was also gone. His body was scratched, and the coroner listed the cause of death as exposure. But the author questions the official explanation. How could a frail 5-year-old climb so far uphill through rocks and brush, in cold weather, without shoes or socks? Why would he remove the very clothing that could have helped him survive? And why were those items never found? The case becomes even stranger because Jerry's disappearance happened in the same mountain range where another man, Paul Fugate, would vanish decades later. Then comes Ronald McGee, a 2-year-old boy who disappeared in 1942 near Congress, Arizona. Ronald was playing with his 4-year-old brother in a wash near their home when he vanished. His family searched immediately, and a large search followed. For days, volunteers, professionals, and even Army aircraft were involved, but Ronald was not found. Then expert trackers discovered faint signs that led into rugged mountain terrain. His body was eventually found roughly 12 miles from home, near the side of a peak. He was scratched and torn, and again the cause of death was listed as exposure. But the author strongly questions how a 2-year-old could travel across miles of desert, climb hundreds of feet in elevation, and end up in such a remote location. A toddler does not usually walk straight into deadly terrain, especially across rough desert and steep slopes. The distance alone makes the case deeply disturbing. Next is Mike McDonald, another 2-year-old boy, who disappeared in 1945 from Sulphur Springs Valley. Mike was playing in his yard with a mixed-breed dog when both vanished. His family and local volunteers searched immediately, but could not find him. The next morning, men on horseback located the family dog in the desert, and then, nearby, they found Mike inside a small cave-like opening in the middle of the valley floor. He was alive, sleeping, and had only a small cut on his foot. What makes this case so bizarre is the distance. Mike had traveled nearly 3 times farther than what search and rescue references would normally expect for a child his age. And the strangest part is that no one in the search had ever known the cave existed. The question is obvious. How did a 2-year-old child find a hidden cave in a vast desert valley while adults searching the same area missed it completely? The chapter then moves to Danny Greenwood, a 5-year-old boy from New Mexico who disappeared in 1967 near Reservation Lake on Mount Baldy, Arizona. Danny had gone fishing with his family in a remote wilderness area. After lunch, he was supposed to walk back to camp, only a few hundred yards away. His father watched him begin the walk in the correct direction. But Danny never arrived. Searchers found small footprints that seemed to move away from the camp and then up into a boulder-filled area toward the summit of Mount Baldy. The terrain was harsh, cold, and difficult, and Mount Baldy is a wilderness area with very limited access. Eventually, Danny's body was found miles away and at a much higher elevation than where he had last been seen. Once again, the official explanation was exposure, but the author questions how a 5-year-old could move uphill for miles in freezing temperatures rather than following the easier path back to camp. The case is compared to other disappearances where children are found at elevations and distances that seem impossible for their age. Then there is Randy Parscale, a 10-year-old boy who disappeared in 1969 in Pepper Sauce Canyon, near Oracle, Arizona. Randy was hiking with his father and 2 brothers when the family reached the end of the trail and realized he was gone. A massive search followed. Hundreds of searchers looked on horseback, on foot, and from the air, but no trace of Randy was found. The case included a tragic twist. One searcher died of a heart attack during the operation. Theories included the possibility that Randy fell into an old mine shaft, became lost, or was abducted. His family continued searching for years, but Randy was never found. The case has similarities to other child disappearances where a boy is with family, goes out of sight for a short time, and then disappears completely. One of the most unusual adult cases in the chapter is Paul Braxton Fugate, a 41-year-old National Park Service ranger who disappeared in 1980 at Chiricahua National Monument. Paul was not an ordinary visitor. He worked in the park, knew the terrain, and was serving as the supervising ranger on the day he disappeared. He told a coworker he was going for a hike, then walked toward the park entrance. About an hour later, he was gone. Paul was never seen again. This became one of the largest searches in the park's history, involving federal, state, and local agencies, helicopters, tracking teams, and extensive ground searches. Yet no evidence of Paul was found. His personal vehicle, money, checks, and belongings were left behind, making voluntary disappearance unlikely. Over time, suspicion developed that Paul may have been abducted or murdered. His wife believed he may have interrupted a crime in progress. There were even later claims from an investigator that a suspect had confessed to killing a police officer and burying the body in the desert, but this lead apparently did not solve the case. The National Park Service eventually sent Paul's wife a letter claiming he had abandoned his job and left no forwarding address, which shocked many people because Paul was still missing and had never been found. For the author, this case stands out because it involves a ranger disappearing from the very park he worked in, and because the official handling of the case seemed strangely cold and incomplete. Other Arizona disappearances continue the pattern. William Cisco vanished in 1944 near Happy Valley while prospecting with friends. He decided to leave camp alone and was never seen again. Law enforcement believed he may have met with foul play or died of exposure in the desert, but his body was never recovered. Donald Schellenberger disappeared in 1994 on Mount Lemmon, northeast of Tucson, after making plans to meet a friend. He was never seen again, and very few details are available. Abraham Califf vanished in 1996 near Gleason, Arizona. He was supervising a drilling team in a remote area and left Tucson to head toward the site. His truck was later found stuck in a rugged mountain area, with his personal items still inside. Searchers followed a path that seemed to lead toward the Dragoon Mountains, but the trail faded, and Abraham was never found. Joan Shelton, a 65-year-old woman, disappeared in 2004 from an assisted living facility near the Santa Catalina Mountains, and Saguaro National Park. She checked out of the facility in the afternoon, and people knew exactly where she was going, but she vanished. A major search of the surrounding mountain area found nothing. Jonathan Betts disappeared in 2006 after driving to Saguaro National Park. His vehicle was found inside the park, and searchers later located his cap near a trail, but his body was never recovered. He was an avid hiker, and law enforcement found no indication of foul play, yet the search produced no explanation. Dwight Riggs disappeared in 2009 from rural Pima County near Tucson. He was last seen leaving his home for a walk. He was interested in archaeology and often walked in the nearby mountains. Law enforcement did not believe foul play was involved, but they could not explain where he went. By the end of the chapter, the author points out a strange shift in the Arizona cases. From 1938 to 1967, 5 boys disappeared, including very young children and older boys, and then the pattern changed. After Paul Fugate disappeared in 1980, the missing persons in this Arizona cluster were adults, mostly men in their 30s, 40s, 60s, and older. The author asks why this demographic change happened. Was it coincidence, or did something shift in the way people disappeared in the region? The most disturbing part is that many of these disappearances happened in areas where searchers believed they had a strong chance of finding the missing person. The terrain was rugged, but not impossible. The search efforts were large, but often unsuccessful. Children were found too far away. Adults vanished despite experience and preparation. Clothing disappeared. Trails went cold. Tracks appeared in places that raised more questions than answers. Arizona's wilderness may look different from the forests of Washington, Oregon, and California, but the pattern feels familiar. A person is there one moment and gone the next. Search teams arrive. Dogs, trackers, helicopters, and volunteers spread out across the land. And still, the desert gives back almost nothing. Maybe these cases were accidents. Maybe some were exposure, falls, animal encounters, or crimes. But when toddlers end up miles away, when a 5-year-old is found high above camp without shoes, when a park ranger disappears from the place he knows best, and when experienced adults leave behind vehicles, money, and belongings but never return, the simplest explanations begin to feel less certain. Arizona's mountains and deserts are vast, ancient, and unforgiving. And in these cases, they seem to hold their secrets with terrifying silence. The question is not only why these people disappeared. The question is why, after so many searches, so many years, and so many repeated patterns, we still have so few answers.